Hi, everybody. I'm Christine Schiavone. Our show is Spiritual Exploration. Tonight, I'm here with Deborah Rose, who's usually with me for the predictions of the following year, and she does a beautiful job of making predictions. And she's here tonight, though, because I wanted to talk about eclipses and retrogrades, because planets go retrograde at certain times of the year, especially Mercury, who goes retrograde about 3 or 4 times a year. And it lasts quite a while, and it really turns a lot of things upside down. And Deborah Rose is here to talk to us about it and tell us why these things happen and how they affect us. Because, it's been 5,000 years since man looked up at the sky and said, hey, what's going on up there affects what's going on down here. Mm-hmm. It affects us individually, as a group, as a country, as a world, whatever. It affects us. And when planets go retrograde, they affect us even more. So we just now finished a Mercury retrograde. Pluto's going to be retrograde till October. Mm-hmm. And Mercury and Pluto were together this time for a while, mm-hmm. which made things even more topsy-turvy.
Intense.
And so I'm really curious to know, how does a planet go retrograde and what happens when it does? Let's first get into Mercury.
Okay. Well, let me explain a little bit about retrogrades for starters. People say, oh my goodness, the planet's turning backwards. And actually it doesn't turn backwards. If the planet actually moved that way, the entire solar system would be turned upside down. Uh-huh. So what happens is that the planet slows down. And as the planet slows down, we have the opportunity to slow down and take a look at those things, let's say, that Mercury might rule or have dominion over. So it slows down, it changes its speed, and that allows us, our frequency, our brain, to slow down and take a look. So, for instance, when we talk about Mercury retrograde, well, think of the word retrograde. R-E means to go back over, to retreat, right? Reboot, rethink, rewrite. Right? So you get an opportunity to go back over those things that you have sped through during your, let's say, 4 months out of the year. Mercury does, normally within a year, will go backwards 3 times a year, with the exception, like last year, where in December it was actually the 4th, uh-huh. and then it would take us into the next year. Uh-huh. So yes, 3 to 4 times a year. At 3 weeks at a time, 21 days. Here's the interesting thing, let's say, about Mercury retrograde. So let's say Mercury goes, it's at 0 degrees Taurus, and it turns retrograde. It will go back 29, 28, 27 degrees Aries, right, the previous sign. And then it will go backwards, and let's say it stops at 10 degrees Aries. And then the planet goes forward. So in those 3 weeks, you can review in your chart, if you know your chart, you can review where Mercury is, where Aries is, where Taurus started. And then, let's say, okay, so it's at 10 degrees Aries. Then it goes all the way back to 0 degrees Taurus. It returns. It takes 3 weeks for the planet to return.
Wow. So
post-retrograde, pre-retrograde, that's where you hear those terms.
Yeah.
You are in a retrograde, let's say when the planet actually begins to do its backward motion. But there's a period of time, about 3 weeks before, all of a sudden everything's falling apart. I feel it always 10 days before I see it. I watch people and I'll watch things that happen to people. And about 10 days before, I know what area of their life they're going to have to work on, because everything turns upside down then. And then the retrograde begins, and then the true happenings. They have a feeling that, they're going to reverse their mortgage, or they're waiting for bank papers, or their daughter calls and says, oh, I can do this, or I can't do that. And then the retrograde happens, Mom, come and get me. It's not happening. And then, so on the 15th of this month, the Mercury finally turned forward again, right? So what are we, 3-4 days later? It's going to take a minimum of 10 days and probably 3 weeks for people to settle the issues of the retrograde.
So, in other words, in order to, if somebody wants to move on a certain thing, they should wait 10 days after the retrograde.
Well, I say a minimum of 3 because the planet is in what I call the chaos.
Now it's what, 4 or 5 days?
Yeah, so I'm just starting to watch people kind of get their energies back together.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I know some people that are waiting on bank papers, and so let's say they got it today, and then they can't file it till Monday because now it's a weekend, and it's really we get closer to what we are trying to get done 3 weeks after the retro, or 10 days after the retro, and then you start to get your life back in order. But it doesn't happen when they say, okay, Mercury turned retrograde today at 5 p.m. I'm going to sign those papers at 6. Don't do that. Because at 6 o'clock, it's still chaotic. It's almost like if you're running and you fall, you need a minute to get yourself back up. You scramble. You get back up, and then you kind of make sure you're okay, and then you get your rhythm back. And then it takes you time to get your speed back. And that's the same thing to happen to these planets. We have an opportunity to reflect when any planet goes retrograde. So we have the opportunity to reflect. And whether it's Mercury, which would rule day-to-day communications and signing of papers and large ticket items, cars, anything mechanical, your schedule, the way you think. You could be in a relationship and suddenly, let's say it's a brand new relationship, which is why astrologers will always say, you have a new love in your life? Good. Give it 3 months. Because in 3 months, you're going to hit a retro. And everybody's wonderful in the beginning. But then, at that 3-month period, the Mercury goes retrograde, you go, gee, they said they were going to do this and they didn't. Or they were so intense and now they backed off. Or they were talking about, let's do this, let's go away, let's hang out, and now they're kind of, they're changing their tune. Yeah, they're rethinking, and you're watching, and you're rethinking. So the retrogrades give us time to slow down and think.
What if 2 people meet on close to a retrograde?
I usually wait till that retro is over, or the next retrograde, which might be about 3 months away.
In other words, you meet somebody and say, let's wait 3 months.
No, I wouldn't do that. I would, there are so many things, especially in human relationships. Number one, what I've seen with retrograde relationships, people get back together, right? So let's say your high school sweetheart, you left him in high school. You went on to college, you got married, had a baby, now you're divorced. Guess who you could run into? You could run into that old love. Maybe the karma with your partner is done. And now you have an opportunity to go back and take a look at that first love. Maybe they learned something, maybe you learned something. I see that happen all the time. And retrograde relationships, you didn't learn a lesson, let's say. So
people can learn lessons.
Oh, you absolutely. Well, you know what, Chris? I don't care if the planets are spinning from their tops. You're going to learn a lesson every day you breathe.
Well, that's true. We always learn something, and no matter who you run into, whether you know a person or not, you learn something from them.
That's kind of the beauty of life, that we are constantly stimulated and learning, and we have the opportunity. People don't look at life properly sometimes, I think. It's a burden and it's a problem. And, just when we get settled, all of a sudden it blows up again. Well, yeah, sure. Sometimes we do feel that way. But if you turn your mind to well, this is happening because what do I have to learn? What do I have to do? And what joy is in the moment? There have been times when life has been really hard for friends and family and myself, everybody. And I always look and I say, all right, so they're dealing with this kind of crummy energy right now. But what could we do today to have some fun? What could we do today to share, to create something deep or meaningful, or to just find the peace and the beauty of the day? We just don't think like that. And when some of these planets, especially the heavy ones, when they do that, when they turn backwards and they hit different areas of our charts, the universe is telling us, come on. Yeah, I see the difficulty you're in, but how about the lessons behind it? I think that's the way every scripture is written, no matter whether it's the Quran or the Talmud or the Kabbalah or the Bible. It's written, and you're going through this right now, but what's the beauty? What are you getting? What are you learning? What else besides dealing with the difficulty are you doing? And I think that's the magnificence and the beauty of humanity. If there's a seed in your heart of Abraham or Allah or Christ or whomever you may follow, whatever great teacher, it's to awaken that seed. And how do you do that? But in chaos. You have to keep going deep, dig deep. And retrograde means, come on, go deep. So let me give you an example. So yes, Mercury and Pluto touched in a conjunction. Mercury is the way you think, your perceptions, your thoughts. Pluto, whew, that is quite the planet. I'll give you an example if you're trying to understand Pluto. Pluto rules everything that you do not see, the depth, the underworld, volcanoes, right? It's deep, it's intense, it's dark, it's hidden. One of the key words of Pluto. So when Mercury and Pluto come together, what you see, let's use the country, things are being uncovered that had been hidden or very intense or shadowed, right? The Pluto shadow. And all of a sudden, to man's common mind come these little secrets. It rules hidden enemies. Not overt, hidden. And so facts that were hidden will come to your mind. It'll go out in the news media, it'll be on TV, you might hear it on the radio. There's some discovery of some kind of paperwork or something. Now, in human relationships, you have a partner, and all of a sudden you find out your partner's been stealing from the company, or your wife or husband's been having an affair. That's Pluto coming in your life saying, hey, listen, I'm going to create a little bit of chaos. I'm going to blow this thing right up, and then let's see what you think. Now, when you look at that, you blow up a family, you blow up a company. You blow up something that was good, was giving, was feeding us. The universe says, I'm going to throw all the pieces up in the air. They're all going to come down, and you're going to put it back together again. Why? Why would that happen? Let me take a love affair, a relationship, a family. Well, maybe the soul's inside. Maybe you've been dealing with a partner that had been so deceptive, and you don't know. You kind of feel uncomfortable because Pluto does hit us on a very intuitive level. You feel like something's not right. You feel like you've been given, and maybe you just say, I'm not going to blow up my family. I'm not going to blow up my love affair. I'm just going to deal with it. This too shall pass. But God has something better. Or your soul has something better. Whatever you want to believe of your higher power, the things that you can't see, the things that your conscious mind doesn't think about, the things that your higher mind thinks about. That's a Pluto hit. That's Pluto retrograde. And Pluto says, listen, your soul has got to move on. You've got to learn. Or maybe you deserve more. And I know you're scared and I know you're stuck, so I will unstick you. It's like being ejected out of your place.
But right now, Pluto is retrograde until October, which means it's not going to really do anything do us any good.
Oh, it is doing an awful lot of good. It's throwing out the trash. Let's put it this way. It's throwing out the trash not just in the kitchen, but it's in the bathrooms. It's making you pull the furniture away from the wall.
In other words, we're getting rid of what's not doing us any good anymore, people
Yes.
included.
People, places, things, ideas, right?
Mm.
Everything in your life is right here. And sometimes when it's time to shake it up, well, those big outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they're going to come on in and shake it up. If you want to start with the heavier planets like Saturn, Saturn we in astrologers always say, well, how do we think about Saturn? Saturn will take away. Saturn will restructure. Saturn will get rid of the dead wood. Uranus, we call Uranus the great awakener. Oh, it's going to come in and shake the heck out of things. And with Uranus, it'll happen like that. You don't see it coming. All of a sudden, it's awakening and it's boom. And sometimes it's the awakening that has the long-term effect. You look at yourself and, why didn't I feel this? Why didn't I see this? And the planet Uranus works quite interestingly with Saturn in that Saturn is structure. And if we look at the evolution of mankind, you take a structure and you renovate or you renew or you add new with old. Let's think about a building, all right? So here's this beautiful old home, and it was made with beautiful wood that we don't have now. That's good, but the entire foundation, we have materials and steel and things that we can build with that will make it last 100 years, not 50 or not 20 without breaking down. We have better roofs, we have better foundations, we have better waterproofing. These are things that is Saturn, the beauty, the structure, the original foundation, the original design, whatever it might be, even if it's with our life, the way we think. Uranus comes in, shakes it up, an earthquake, something, takes the house down. Take that beautiful wood that you're just never going to find. Take that amazing art and let's restructure it, build it better, build it back new. Now, Neptune. This one scares the heck out of me. Neptune, well, first of all, here's a good way to think about it. Neptune rules fog. It's the dream, it's the illusion. And what I've seen with Neptune, let's say in love affairs, Neptune and politicians, they look great. And then you figure out who they are. Like Santos. You get, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. And then you find out that they're nothing like that. That's the Neptune fog. Neptune is also the higher ruler of Jupiter. So you meet someone on a Venus transit, and the Neptune's crossing over your sun, or the Neptune sit on the sun. Well, either that's the great deceiver, or that's a karmic love. You knew them before. You've loved them before. And God gives you that love back.
And then where does it go?
Well, if it's an etheric love, it'll take you for the rest of your life because you always see the beauty of that soul. You always see the love that's there, and that's how we can kind of keep love going. And then there's Pluto, who's just going to dig up the muck from the bottom and throw it up in the air. So all of these planets are amazing. So here, and this is something we talk about an awful lot in our predictions. I might say, all right, this year, because it doesn't happen every year, it happens every couple of years, Venus will go backwards, or Mars will go backwards, things that we kind of see as the personal planets. Venus goes backwards. Somebody looks in the mirror and says, I don't like my face. I'm going to have plastic surgery. Oh, good Lord. That never works out well.
No, it doesn't. You see all these people, and you can tell
Yeah.
that they had plastic
Surgery. That's right. Yeah, those guys are still employed while that's happening. And it never turns out well. It's either sloppy work, or it's too much work, or it's too much of a transformation. The people do not look like themselves. And that is supposed to be subtle rejuvenation. And I've seen it go really bad when Pluto was in opposition. It means you can't get back whatever you've lost. These surgeons can correct, but not get back. An interesting phenomenon that I had noticed. Oh, good Lord, it has to be. Let's see now, 2023, 2017, 2015, 20. So maybe about 2013. 2013, all of a sudden, now this was going on in Hollywood an awful lot, but in 2013, those fillers, the fillers started coming in. Fill your lips, fill your cheeks, fill your smile lines,
Oh,
fill,
well, they
fill,
still
fill.
do that, yeah.
Right.
Botox and all that.
Yeah, that really started coming about. It came out of Hollywood and it kind of hit mainstream. And I was looking at a Venus retrograde. It was 2013, 2012, something like that. And I looked and I said, there's a new trend coming. There were some other planets, I don't know if it was the Pluto or the Uranus, like, the latest and greatest thing is going to be coming out. And I did notice it, and all of a sudden, all my clients wanted to get these fillers and get this stuff, and what is it? And I just had a bad feeling about it because of the Uranus connection. You don't know how it's going to work.
Yeah.
Or whatever they put in might not be the same thing tomorrow. And the Pluto, you're going to alter, really, really alter who you are. Now, girls would say, well, I have thin lips, so I want fat ones. Or I want to get rid of these smile lines. Or whatever the heck else they were doing. I don't know quite what they do with it all. So I kept looking at the chart saying, there are going to be repercussions and not good ones. I don't know what they are. Well, Saturn, there's a Saturn aspect there in the chart. I think it was a Saturn square. A friend of mine is an oral surgeon, and he says sometimes when they take the x-rays, panaurals for surgery or whatever dental work they have to do, they'll see some of the stuff stuck in the skin.
Really?
Yeah, some of it, these things are supposed to be dissolvable. I know, like with my horses, they might inject hyaluronic acid to make sure, which is a natural substance in your body, to heal a wound or a tendon or a ligament in a horse and to keep the joints lubricated. Well, they're putting that in your face. And I don't know if you've seen some of the celebrities, they get bumpy, or they wind up with the bubble cheeks, the apple cheeks, or sometimes this doesn't dissolve or doesn't dissolve evenly. You're going to get all kinds of calls now from plastic surgeons. But anyway. So, but it was those planets retrograde that highlighted that this trend, although it might be a 20-year trend, there would have to be corrections along the way, because what it starts out to be is not going to be the end. So that was a Venus transit. When Mars goes backwards, I see a lot of breakups. I see people argue and finally split. I see it in corporations. I see it in personal lives. Mars rules human sexuality, too. That's when that person steps out of a love affair, a relationship, a marriage, and then all hell breaks loose. When I see a Mars transit like that, a retrograde like that, and when it hits a personal planet the way you think or your love life, I say, you do this right now, I guarantee this marriage, this love affair is over. And sure enough. So it has a tremendous effect on how we think and what we do. And I do see with a lot of Mars, I see regret, human regret, where people will go, why did I do that? I knew that was going to happen. But Mars is the way we take action. So to me, karmically, you have to be much more in control of your conscious mind, because Mars is still sort of in that personal arena. When AIDS exploded, you had a Mars retrograde. You had a Pluto retrograde. Both planets have something to do with sexuality. Pluto rules Scorpio, which rules our sexuality. Mars is how we use that energy. When you look at the trends and the retrogrades, it's amazing. And when you have eclipses that hit these retrogrades. So we just had an eclipse.
We had 2 eclipses,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Always in pairs and a lunar.
And a lunar.
They come in pairs. You'll get your solar, and 2 weeks later you're going to get a lunar.
All the way, always.
Always, yeah. Now the solar, when I say, when I talk to people, I'll talk about, well, the solar is going to have something to do with the actions in your life, the people in your life, the directions in your life. And the lunar is going to have an awful lot to do with your emotions in that life. So that we get the solar, and all of a sudden the earth shakes a little bit. And I love eclipses for unsticking us, for getting us going, for making things happen. If you feel stuck, watch an eclipse. If that hits a personal planet or a planet where you're trying to unstick yourself, you're gonna get unstuck. You're gonna get launched, maybe. It depends. Um, but also, one interesting thing before I go on about the human element of it, I don't know if you noticed, but for all of you out there, take a look at temperature. You have the sun, you have a solar eclipse, and it starts to um, take effect, let's say. Watch the temperature drop. Watch the temperature on the Earth plane. When we had, obviously if it's a total solar eclipse, you could get a 10-degree temperature drop just within a few hours. The one that we just had, we had a lot of wind. Did you notice how windy it was? And it was for a few days.
My friend that lives upstairs said she had to chase the recycling pail down the street.
There you go. Yeah. It went from super warm, and then all of a sudden it got chilly, and it got wildly windy for a few days. And then it'll linger until we had the lunar eclipse. The wind went on for 2 weeks, not as wild as when we had the eclipse. But up until the next lunar eclipse, that's when everything started to calm down, and that's when the temperature changed a little bit again. It was still a little brisk, but it was not as bad because we didn't have the cold and the wind. Mm-hmm. And right before that, we went into kind of hot temperatures, unusually warm. I think we had one day when it was like 91. And then, and then the eclipse hit.
I remember one day it did get pretty
Yep.
warm.
So, that's when we get our king tides. You get a wild lunar eclipse, you're going to get a king tide. Those tides are going to rise up an awful lot more, 3 feet to 10 feet more. And on a regular full moon, you might get 2 feet, 1 foot, 3 feet maybe, but not 10 feet. So it's amazing how the eclipses raise our emotional energy, raise our awareness. That's what the solar eclipse is going to do. Even raises your inner power, your idea about yourself. I just had somebody who was devastated by a divorce. And, he was struggling. He was struggling for probably 3 years, going through the divorce too, recognizing, trying to fix it, all the stages you would imagine, because there was family involved. And it was this solar eclipse and lunar eclipse where I saw him come together and just say, I could do this. And he finally stopped mourning his losses, looked back and went, holy Hannah, I am so happy I'm out of that. And now he's sort of enjoying his autonomy. He's enjoying being alone. He's okay with it. And it's from this place that he will move on. So, different people, different things. The breakdown of companies. When you change the attitude of a company, you purchase another company. Pluto, people leave the company. Mercury retrograde, people leave. So many changes in employment under Mercury retrograde. People will say, all right, I know I have to leave this job. Right now, I'm done. I'm going. Or, you're interviewing. Nowadays, when I work with kids or young people, they're trying to get a new job for 2 years. This market's cuckoo. And these are kids with, they come out of Princeton, they have their masters, they're well educated, they have jobs, they have titles, they make money, and they just can't move. There's not much available, or it's step down or take less money. But when I see those retrogrades, when I see those eclipses, that's when I know changes are going to happen. The other thing I see, and this is not a good thing, when I see the Mercury retrograde or the Venus retrograde, those two, and I get an eclipse with Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto involved in their personal planets, I get suicide. So think about this. The personal planets will connect you to the earth. How you think, how you view yourself, the image of yourself, Venus. Do you love yourself, how you look? Do you fit into your community? Do you fit into your society? And then you get all these big heavies hitting or coming up on a retrograde, when the Mercury is retrograde and a Pluto is retrograde or a Neptune is, you think back to all the reasons why I don't belong here, I don't fit in. It's kind of like a double whammy. And the heavy planets, Pluto has a lot to do with death, the transformation, keyword for Pluto, transform. The greatest transformation we make is when we come into the physical body and we leave it. Neptune, you want to move into the abyss. You want to live in the dream world. You want to get off the earth plane. Uranus, you're hit with a sudden flash of emotion. And you don't put a lot of deep thought in it. You just do it. Or Saturn. Saturn will take away the life, take away the physical body, because you feel like you have finished a journey and you're ready to go forward. Now, when these eclipses hit those situations, that's when people that are too frightened, too scared, too weak, I don't think I could do it, I can't leave, I don't want to leave my dog, my mother, that's when they'll just say, oh, forget it. The eclipse opens up the pathway between the earth and the heavens. And I believe that they get to see where we came from. They see the soul, they release themselves from their physical body, and they follow that path to nirvana, whatever that may be. But it's interesting I studied suicides, and I found that the Mercury retro before the person actually did the suicide, if they did suicide on a retrograde, would happen. You see the behavior, the effects, the talk with loved ones, even the notes written 3 months before, and then they act on it on the next retrograde, especially if there's a heavy planet involved, or the person's going to commit suicide, and then right up to here, and then they wait a minute. They have a great awakening. Sometimes the Pluto retrograde shows them their heaven, their God. They get in touch with a loved one. I had a girl who...
Something happens to stop it.
That's right.
You had
Spirit comes through.
Yeah.
Remember, Pluto's death.
One time with a guest, we had somebody email saying that because they watched my show, they changed their mind about committing a suicide, which made us feel good.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I think there are forces in this world, and I don't want to get religious because I want to try to honor everybody, but I believe there are forces in this world and opportunities that come to us at certain times. Certain people walk into our life to heal us, to fix us. To me, in my opinion, and that's just me, God's saying, hey, wait a minute, I have a thought. How about you hang out and I try to help you out over here? How about I inspire you forward rather than throw you out?
Mm-hmm.
So because, people believe that you go on to the other side, you do free yourself from this plane, yes. But that doesn't mean you free yourself from the lessons.
Problems.
That's right.
Yes, I know. You're still going to have those problems, but you're going to be less able to do anything about them.
In the heavens, we lose a bit of the ego. We lose ego. We lose judgment. We remember the magnificence of who we are. Therefore, we're creative, right?
Yeah.
Man was made in the image of God. And who's God? God is the creator. So all of a sudden, what we thought was so heavy and so impossible here, we are suddenly inspired and we move forward and we can see without ego getting involved. Like, wow, yeah, I did used to do this and I didn't believe. Some of the things when people have spiritual experiences, and this fascinates me, they don't believe in themselves, they don't see who they are, they don't realize they're good. And then they have these great awakenings and they'll go, oh my God, why? Why didn't I see who I was? There are people that are having experiences with medicinal plants. It's a new happening in the field of psychology and psychiatry. They're going down to Costa Rica, they're going down to Africa, and they're dealing with hallucinogenic plants. It's sort of like a Dr. Raymond Moody,
Like a
not in the
mushroom?
50s or 60s. Not mushrooms. It's a little more intense,
Mm.
and you wind up with hallucinations. But I've had a few people that have gone down there, and a couple of them are doctors, there are miserable side effects on the GI system, but they say they had an awakening. Now I know what my life is for. Now I see I'm not a doctor, I'm a healer. Now I'm not into the country club and the money. Now I'm into the true healing. Or they find themselves, or they heal their own bodies, or they heal their own mind, or they get in touch with a loved one who abandoned them or left them when they were young. And I saw one young physician just kind of turn from a grumbling little kid into a magnificent soul who would respect his mother, who was a phenomenal physician, by the way. And he overcame and forgave his father, who was also a brilliant scientist who abandoned the family. So this kid came from a lot of hard work, an awful lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and he just healed. And I'm tracking him now. We're sort of working on a little bit of a research project. And he's just growing. What's amazing, he's growing. The ego, the judgment, the pain is just gone. And, when I look at human behavior, there are some people where I say, oh my God, is there even a soul? But if you look, you find the pain, you track the pain. And I believe a lot of people can be healed. There are going to be people, look at history. There are going to be people in history that are never going to heal. They have to go over to the other side in order to get out of their way. But I see such a link between these planets, the energy of these planets, the movement, the eclipses, and how people transform, major transformations. And we're seeing it right now in our country. Things that were hidden for years, in many administrations. All of a sudden, these eclipses and these retrogrades, and even when, what I call the demise of America, when that happened, there were many, many, many planets in Capricorn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. And when you have a lineup of 6 planets, 6 influences, you're going to get restrictions and denials and delays. And Saturn rules structure. And that's when, let's say, the dark forces took over. But when Pluto just left Capricorn and went into Aquarius, Pluto says, listen, I left behind a lot of darkness, but now I'm going to move into Aquarius. I'm going to empower the people. When you think of Aquarius, I think of the words, we the people. I will empower, because Pluto is powerful. I will empower the people. And now you're going to get all the dust, all the nonsense kicking up. And we're going to see what's there. And no opinion on it, whether it's light or dark, whatever you believe what you need to believe. Just watch. Watch without prejudice. Mm. And let's see what comes up. So these retrogrades and eclipses, they are informants. The retrogrades slow us down and say, hey, wait a minute. Let's stop and think about this. Did you ever get so overheated in an argument you can't hear the other person, you don't hear the other side, you get so heated up in your own emotions, and then you stop because you're exhausted, and then you start to say, what did they say? Did they express that? Am I seeing this properly, or am I caught? And it's actually in those moments when you try to take a look at what the other person, or the other side of the coin is, that you start to gain a little bit of perspective and freedom from yourself, from your own darkness, from your own ignorance, from your own even limited perspective. Whatever you hold true will limit you to that just now. And let's say your life grows on and you meet new people and you learn new things, and here you have this old thought. We need that Mercury retrograde. We have to shake ourselves loose. Otherwise, we have beauty in front of us. It's like having a beautiful meal in front of us, but it was served 15 minutes after lunch. You need space and time in order to absorb and enjoy and even benefit from this. You overload the digestive system, you're not going to get any good from that. Right? Body can't process that. The life can't process that. The mind can't process that. So people will say to me, oh no, it's a retrograde. And I'll go, wait a minute now. Hold on. Let's take a look at the good that can come from this. And I just did this in a group that I was working with, and I said, let's use this retrograde for something that you have not accomplished. And, there was the lunar eclipse. We had a new moon. We had some good aspects. And I said, well, listen, new moons are really good for starting diets.
Hmm.
right? And I don't mean diet, lose weight. That sometimes in this case, because of the Pluto, we could resurrect your diet. We could get you into the type of diet that you need. So they all went to nutritionists. They all found out what foods they could eat, couldn't eat, what was good for their bodies. Some of them at that time gotten blood work done, and there are 10 women right now that are a whole lot healthier than they were 4 weeks ago.
Oh, good.
So you see, that's it. Let's take a look at the planets. Let's take a look at the retrograde. Let's take a look at the eclipses. And before you start screaming, "Henny penny, the sky's falling," let's use it. That's why this happens. There's an intelligence in this universe. There's a great balance that when we keep our perspective so tiny, so narrow, we are not going to see the wisdom of nature. This is wisdom for us, for humanity, for plants. In having farm, the effects of the growing effects, the seasons, the oil, the soil, the earth, a little oil too.
We do that. Say the wrong word.
The alcohol that I might need at this point. So if we take a look at that, we'll see that there's a reason, and there's so much good that happens afterwards. So one of the things I did here is I tilled the soil on the solar eclipse, and then I tested a little bit, and I found out something. There was an imbalance in some of the chemicals in the soil, some of the nitrates, so that I got to feed the soil. And something else, this land had been farmed organic for 200 years. And when my grandfather had it, he purposefully put fir trees, evergreen trees, on the edges of the property. So if that farmer put down pesticides, it would get caught in the trees.
Oh,
I mean, talk about brilliant.
wow.
And I found glyphosates in my soil, 0.05, 0.03.
What do you grow?
Oh, we lease it out to Jersey farmers, so there's a little bit of everything. Myself, my personal garden, a little bit of everything. I'll grow tomatoes and cucumbers and a couple of lettuces and string beans. But out on the farm, we also grow hay, straw, alfalfa.
Straw.
Yeah.
When the winter comes, I could use some straw.
Oh, I get you some.
Good.
Yeah.
That's for the cats.
Yeah, well, you know what? And I do have someone I deliver straw to for cats.
Mm.
To stuff the
I put it in the little shelters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keeps them warm.
Yeah, we'll get you that.
Oh, great.
And even now, we're going into summer. It will let the air flow underneath them because it's buoyant.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so even now, you change that straw, and I will get you a bale. I'll get you an 80-pound bale.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So, and then we farm out to lettuce farmers, or corn farmers, you name it. We might give it out there. But so then you say, well, what happened here? Well, from the earth, the rain, from that we have acid rain, we have all of these chemicals floating in our air, and when it rains, it comes down, even though it's not on my land. It comes down in the rain.
Hmm.
Right? Because you get the draft from the earth up to the sky, back down again. So when they talk about the pollution of the planet, the more we think about the crop dusting, good Lord, we're just spraying this stuff all over the place. But when you think about that, you say we really do have to think about cleaning up the planet. And I think this is a mistake of man and a mistake of capitalism. And all we have to do is change our mind. I think, that we have all this green planet energy nonsense going on, and it's really simple. Stop using these chemicals. Learn how to farm differently. In my smaller garden, I might use lavender or onions or garlic or something to keep the beetles away or something like that. There are things that you can do with essential oils and onions, garlic, and other things. You can plant certain flowers, certain weeds even. One of the greatest liver cleansers, a weed, dandelions.
Uh-huh.
Right? So
My mother used to pick them out in the front lawn and
yeah,
make soup.
there you go. And that's one of the most healing plants that we should be eating, but we don't. So nature has this wisdom. Nature has this amazing healing ability. Every day, the universe's wisdom is trying to heal us, and every day, in 100 ways, we go against it. So when we look at astrology, there are people that go, "Oh, it's fateful." No, it is science. And years ago, they used to say science is religion and religion is science. It's true. Spirit and science come together. You know, spirit's been here. These things have been here. And then science goes in and discovers it and says, hey, I came up with this. No, you didn't. It's been here. You just put it together,
Right.
which is what we were supposed to do.
You just realized it.
There you go. Yeah. You attuned some of these great sciences. They attuned their brilliant minds to nature. And then we have discoveries. One of my favorite scientists, I love Einstein. And
Yeah, he was very smart.
yeah,
He failed math, you know.
yes, I do. I do know that. Probably because he was sleeping. He was bored. But when, people would argue with me all the time, and I would read some of his writings, I'd say, this man knows God. He knows he's connected to the universe. And then they would read these passages and these letters from other scientists saying that, no, science is science, and this is what motivates me. And then when his daughter turned over her private collection of letters that he wrote to her, you see how aware of spirit, of the unseen world, of God he is, of the frequency and the energy of love. You see who he truly was in his
I'm
personal...
sure he was a marvelous person. So was Nikolai Tesla.
Tesla.
Oh, he's got the same birthday as me.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, 95 years earlier, but...
The stars were in alignment, I guess, when he was born.
Yeah.
Yeah, the story about electricity and who he was working for and how this all came about. All of these brilliant minds born at the same time. It's quite an interesting story about Nikolai Tesla. But there's another astrological chart where he has these amazing connections to things beyond intellectual thought. He has these inspirational planets in the 12th house and the 8th house and the 10th house where you draw from inspiration and you funnel it into your career. Yes, you will become known as someone by your 10th house, but it comes from the unseen worlds in the astrological chart. So again, it's quite interesting. But if we take a look at why these things happen, when they happen, when you look at, again, I'm going to use that word, God's wisdom and timing, it's as if some frequency or force comes down and says, hey, wake up, take a look at this, fix this now, go in this direction, do this. It's a time of awakening. It's a time of learning. It's a time to change your mind, to attune. And I tell you, we miss it. I think as a species where we got so arrogant, we got so narcissistic, we got so blinded by our own power. But it's not our power. It's the power we absorbed from the universe, and then we kind of transmute it into something almost petty when you take a look at the power of the universe and the forces that are around us. And now we're saying, damn, we really screwed up. How do we fix this? Well, you go backwards. Go back to nature, retrograde, even in your thinking. And that's how we're going to heal the future, by going back in our thought. How did these things happen? And where did they go wrong? Due to capitalism, sometimes when we took that shortcut, and it might be destroying our health, destroying the earth, and how people did not think. This is, again, the arrogance of mankind. How do you think that you're going to make $20 million off of something, and you know that there's a byproduct here that's going to destroy the water or destroy the earth, and it's not going to destroy you?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. But how do you reconcile that? Why do you think you're above being destroyed? Because you have all the money? And that's a theme that's
Money
going on
doesn't
right
buy
now.
Everything.
No. Money can't buy wisdom, and it can't buy a good heart. But I mean, there are thousands of things money can't buy. But the arrogance of mankind, oh, that's not going to affect me. I have enough money, or I have enough power, right? Money and power themes. Out of that, Pluto and Capricorn. What does Capricorn represent? Money and power, status. That's why we say Capricorns, they are the hardest working sign of the zodiac. In order to identify themselves, they need that. They need to become good at something. They will work their tail off to educate themselves or become something. Now, the higher realm of Capricorn, they will be of service. They're your best doctors, your best scientists. Who else is going to work that hard? They're going to serve humanity. They're going to build the biggest businesses. But then if we get into the dark side, if mankind tilts and says, oh, money and power, then the shortcuts come in. So that's also the high and low of every sign. There are some physicians I know that are born under the sign Capricorn that just kill themselves for others. Endless compassion.
I'm Capricorn rising myself.
Yeah, endless love, right? And then there are others that, they own the big medical facilities, or they gave up medicine and now they're running the hospital because it's more money, it's less pain, less humanity, and it's easier to deal with the things that don't touch mankind. So it's the darkness, the high and low, and that's what happened to the country. It became money and power, and then when you have all the money in the world, the only thing left is power. But that's when you lose perspective. That's when the retrogrades, even with those people, even with us, we have to stop and look and say, what's wrong here? Where did we get imbalanced? And how do we fix it from here? How do you fix it globally, or how do you fix it in your personal life? When I look at some of the lives of the people with the most money and the most power, they're kind of really unhappy, really empty and driven, wildly driven. So now Pluto's in Aquarius, and we're going to have a different perspective on things. It's going to be more humanity. It's going to be more humane. It's going to be more for groups of people, we the people. But this is why you have all the migration issues also. The people from Venezuela, from Honduras, from Mexico. They're saying, hey, we the people, we want to live like this. So they're coming here. My hope and a thought I had is, well, how about if you take the American dream and you bring it back to Venezuela, you bring it back to Honduras, you bring it back to Africa, and you overthrow those dark governments and you create your own democracies. I'm hoping that at the end of this transit that we might have the human mind moving in that way, that we might fix the earth, that we might get rid of the chemicals. You see a movement happening now in your household cleaners, right? So rather than all of these heavy-duty toxins, now there's a whole string of healing cleaners that we can use in our home.
Oh, yeah, they're advertising them.
Sure. So the idea is to detoxify your environment. Your environment is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So if we can do it in our home, then we're going to start to look at it in our planet. Look at things like Whole Food Market, where they have more organic available. Even in ShopRite, now they have an organic section. Some of these big retailers are recognizing that people are savvy now. So Pluto is about getting rid of the toxins, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. But if you see the little movements, if you're paying attention, it's quite fascinating. I keep saying when I leave this life, I'm just going to watch. I want that seat right in the middle of the movie theater to see how this goes, because I've got it all mapped out in planets.
Oh, good.
And it's exciting. Exciting. So, and every planet, so you might have your eclipses in Taurus, Scorpio, and then in what we call the opposition, right? So we had them in Taurus and Aries, and so now we're going to move, and we go into like October, November. You're going to have the next set of eclipses in opposition to these planets.
In October,
That's
November.
right, yeah. So now...
And something's happening in 2024, too.
Oh, yes, sure. But so if you're looking, let's say, if an eclipse happens, let's say Aries, Taurus, then you're going to look to a Libra, Scorpio. So you're going to look 6 months down the line in what we call an opposition. And this is interesting for all you guys that are taking a look at your own charts. Let's take a look at what just happened at the end of April and into May. What happened in your life, what happened in your work, what happened in your emotions, what happened in your physical self, in your family. And then let's go into October, November. And what changed? What happened? What evolved? what's going on? So I have something here that I have a few clients with. Well, I have two nice ones. One girl got pregnant, and
Was she looking to?
yeah, she was, and it was a 2-year battle, let's say.
Yeah.
And the way it looks now, their house should be finished in September for them to move in by November. So you see, so her family began. Now her home is coming together. So that's happy. And
Oh,
then
good.
I have a client, and he captured the attention of somebody that he liked for a long time. And my prediction to him was, you'll start this slow, but by Christmas, right? By the end of that
And that's what
November, yeah,
happened?
that person's gonna be in your life.
That's really interesting. In the meantime, my time's up. It was all very interesting, though.
Whoa, that was fast.
That was fast. It really was. I saw the time going, and I want to just thank you for coming on to the show again. You're
thank
always
you.
a welcome guest, and I would like to say good night to everyone, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.